Welcome to the Bank First Ranger Hour. Super Talk Mississippi 93.7 Spotlight on Northwest Community College. And you can listen to our live stream at supertalknorthms.com. Just click on the link for the Bank First Ranger Hour. Now, here's your host, Gary Darby.
In the studio and ready to go with you on a Thursday, December 21st. Gary Darby here until close to 10. Today on our program, we'll discuss things with Sports Information Director, good friend of the program, Brian Lentz, has agreed to join us on this version of the Bank First Ranger Hour. So we'll do a lot of things in the athletics world, and who knows, whatever the discussion may go with Brian, he's on the program coming up in our next segment. So we have lots of things to get into with Brian, and I hope you stick around on this one today. Your weather forecast, as we take a peek at that, and then we'll hook up with Mr. Lentz and bring him onto the program. All right, show started. We'll make a little phone call to the Senatobia area, and we'll bring in Sports Information Director Brian Lentz on the show.
This hour is everything Northwest. Your connection to Northwest Mississippi Community College and powered by Bank First. Thanks for joining us on the Bank First Ranger Hour. Join the conversation now by texting 662-426-1093.
Brian Lentz is the Sports Information Director at Northwest Community College. He's going to be the guest on the program today. We'll stretch things out. We're going to get into some football discussion and do some things first, make him hang around a little bit and see what else we can come up with. But congratulations, sir, on life in general and expanding the Lentz family and the marriage and things. I don't know that we've said that on the program, but personally, I guess it's been a pretty good 2023 for you.
It has. It's been a good 2023 for Northwest and a good 2023 for myself, as you mentioned. Still not too far removed from getting back from Jamaica. I think that was probably the question I was asked the most frequently over the last couple weeks. Every employee on campus that saw me literally is, how was Jamaica? How was Jamaica? And I told them the same thing every time. I didn't want to come home. It's hard to beat tropical weather, 80, upper 80s. You're right on the beach.
Yep.
At the resort and all that stuff. So it was a really good honeymoon, really good Thanksgiving holiday, and now heading right into Christmas to do the same thing. Going to go to California next week, spend a little time with my mom's side of the family out there. Going to go to Disneyland, so doing a lot of traveling. Perfect time of year for it, I suppose.
Good for you. You get a little small break here. I know we'll get into, before we're done, basketball returns on the 6th. Things of that nature. But yesterday we had a National Signing Day, did a little program here, mentioned a couple of the guys that at the time, before 10 a.m. was done, from Northwest, who, whether it was Tristan Shorter at Oxford or the couple of Horn Lake guys, right, that were within the area that played at Northwest and had already signed before we're done. You want to lead us through? Let's do football in general, though, before we get into some signees. It was another excellent season for Coach Benji Parker and the football team, on the field, off the field. Final results, they obviously would like to have been playing for a national championship. That did not occur this year, but on the field, just another successful one because they finish up nationally ranked again.
Well, look, I think we alluded to it entering this season. Had a really, in some spots, a really young roster. Didn't have, despite the youth that was on this year's roster, there was also a lot of talent there, and that's why Northwest still had a winning record, 7-3, finishing second in the North Division. They made it to the first round of the playoffs, lost to Colin, who wound up going to a bowl game to finish out their season, playing for the conference championship as well. But really, just speaking about Northwest and the fact it came out earlier this week, the final NJCAA rankings, and they finished the year number 13 in the nation. Still not bad at all. 10th straight postseason appearance. So they've gone to the postseason every year since Benji Parker's been the head coach, starting in 2016. And a little bit about Coach Parker and his staff, since I have this nugget right in front of me. But since 2016, Northwest has compiled a 65-19 overall record and a 774 winning percentage. Coach Parker has just done a tremendous job with this program and making them nationally relevant, keeping Northwest in the national discussion every year, keeping them in the rankings. And not only that, but what his staff has done with player development has been remarkable. We'll talk a little bit about this, as you alluded to, with signing day, but Northwest has now produced, aside from just a handful can say. I mean, Northwest, when it comes to player development and sending guys to the 4-year level, and not just 4-year, but also Division I programs, I don't know if anybody does it better than Northwest. I mean, you see guys that go to the next level. They go to the SEC, they go to the ACC, the Big 12, American Conference, etc. And they're not just on the rosters there. They're actively starting. They're actively playing. And then the ones that make it to the NFL or XFL, Canadian Football League, etc., they're the ones that are not just riding the bench. They're actively playing. And that's something that a lot of schools can't say. You may be able to say that they have a guy that plays for Virginia Tech, but he may only see the field as a backup. Well, I mean, we got people that start for these schools. So the amount of player development and the winning success that Northwest has had has just been nothing short of remarkable since Coach Parker took over.
I pulled up the coaching staff on the website, nwccrangers.com. I now feel older, and for reasons I'm about to mention. But, Stan Hill, Scott Oakley is where I'll start, because I've known both of them since probably before their teenage years, right? And now you see them as offensive coordinator, quarterback coach. Scott Oakley has been there as the wide receivers coach for a while now. But to see Coach Parker and those two, but add in, the others that have been there and maybe some that have, not been there quite as long that I don't know as personally as those. But I think one of the things that Coach Parker has always done is he has had a great staff put together, right? A great group of guys for whatever position they were coaching or coordinating or whatever it might be, and a great group of men to lead these players. Coach Parker's put together
Absolutely.
Always a great staff.
Oh, no doubt about it. Look, that's what I was alluding to a little bit in that last conversation piece. I mean, the staff and what they've been able to do with player development has just been nothing short of incredible. And for the most part, Northwest, the coaches that Coach Parker has on his staff, they stick around for a while, and for good reason, because they do a tremendous job. Stan Hill, as he mentioned, I kind of call him the quarterback whisperer, because I look at the quarterbacks that he has coached since being here at Northwest, and they have all gone to Division I or to a 4-year school in some capacity, even some that, maybe didn't see the field as often. I mean, we had 2 quarterbacks in 2016, one of them being Clay Holgerson. That was Coach Hill's first year on the staff. He wound up going to Division I. Then, of course, he had Jack Abraham. Oxford folks still know how good Jack Abraham was for Oxford High and for Northwest as well. And then Jacob Free in 2018 going on to Troy. You had a couple there in 2019 that went on to the 4-year level. And then, of course, Michael Hires going to Samford, and Ren Heffley to Middle Tennessee. I mean, anytime that Coach Hill brings in a quarterback, I just always wonder what Division I school are they going to go to after they go to Northwest, because they always find a way to the Division I level, and that speaks to the talent that Coach Hill has been able to instill in these guys working with them. But also, it extends far beyond that. Scott Oakley is the longest tenured coach on the staff, and he has coached and developed countless receivers that have gone on to 4-year programs and in the pros. And, of course, the job that Coach Pittman and Coach Charles Jones and Paige Andrews do on the defensive side has been incredible as well. And, of course, Coach Jim Jones on the offensive line, too. So, I mean, you've got the best, I think, hands down, the best staff and the most consistent staff right here at Northwest. And there's not a lot of community colleges that can say that with their programs.
All right, so with that, yesterday was National Signing Day. I mentioned a name or two early, but from this past Northwest football team, who's moving on to a 4-year school?
Well, you have 9 players going on to the 4-year level, and I'll have more information about this a little later today on nwccrangers.com. But you only have 9 players right now, but that's you're going to see a couple more, I'm sure, either in the coming days or at least for the February signing day. We didn't have a lot of sophomores on this year's roster, so that's why the number's a little bit lower than in years past. But that being said, all 9 of these players so far are going to the Division I level. And I'm going to start with Cameron Pascal, an offensive lineman from Union, Mississippi. He's going on to Memphis. You have Demonier Lacey, a defensive lineman, going to Temple. You have 2 guys going to ULM. Defensive back Charles Thomas from Horn Lake. He's going to Monroe. And also Tristan Shorter, who you mentioned yesterday, going to Louisiana Monroe as well from the defensive line. Melvin Collins Jr., offensive lineman, going to Western Kentucky. Got another offensive lineman that was All-American, Dylan Spencer, going to Central Arkansas. And I need to back up and mention Charles Thomas also was an All-American. That came out the night before signing day. And then you have a couple more. You got a running back, Xavier Davis to Northwestern State, Jamarlin Green, defensive back to Arkansas Pine Bluff, and then Rod Daniels, defensive lineman from Horn Lake. He was one of those that went Division I a couple of years ago, but had another year of eligibility with the whole COVID and medical red shirts and things like that. So he initially went to Alabama State last season, came back for another year of JUCO eligibility this year, and now he's going on to Liberty. So good landing spot there. We all see how well Coach Chadwell has done with Liberty this season. And so really just a good class and more to come, I'm sure. I'm sure we'll see Keegan Patterson land somewhere, maybe Keon Cunningham on the defensive side. Time will tell on those 2 guys and maybe a couple others. But overall, still a pretty good class of 4-year signees for Northwest.
So I know you're keeping up with that and then also keeping up with the next group of Rangers, right? The next group that Coach Parker and his staff go out and get. When does that list, when does that information come out?
Well, we'll release those in February
Gotcha.
on the, as I like to call it, the traditional signing day, because that's going to be a class that's full of a lot of high school seniors coming in. In fact, this is pretty much recruiting season for community colleges in January. That's what I call the second season of JUCO football. And they'll have that signing day in early February. So to know about the incoming class of Rangers, and I'm sure there will be some Division I transfers that make their way to Northwest before next season rolls around as well. But those will all come out in February. I have seen some scattered commitments on social media, but, of course, I wait till they sign to promote all that. But
Sure.
Either way, I just know what we talked about with the coaching staff at Northwest. They're going to bring in a good class, and it's going to be a good year regardless. So can't wait to see how that list pans out.
Yeah, I saw on the, I guess, the X or the Twitter, as I still call it Twitter, and
Me
not
too.
X, a player from Tupelo or here or wherever. And I'm not, obviously, as you said, you got to wait and see, and people have to sign to do things to get that full release. And you brought it up. This transfer portal and the NIL and the way it's gone with college football has totally changed the landscape and totally changed even recruiting in the community college world, I believe, as far as 4-year schools recruiting these community college guys. And it's good to see the list that you put out each and every year of the fact that, 4-year schools are giving these guys the opportunity after seeing what they do, whether it's a year in Senatobia or 2 years in Senatobia. I mean, if you look at teams that have kind of built themselves quickly and gotten on a national landscape, it's a team like New Mexico State. I know Barry Odom went and got some at UNLV. There are other teams that got themselves relevant in a hurry on the 4-year level in many conferences throughout because they have brought in, some of these guys that have, paid the price and ridden the buses up and down Mississippi highways or wherever that community college may be. I'm glad they're starting to see some of that again.
Absolutely. And speaking of transfer portal, I was going to segue into something as well. We had a couple former Rangers who have already signed Division I to Division I programs last year that hit the transfer portal this year, and it actually paid off. Sam Brumfield, a linebacker from Pearl, who we saw the last several years with Northwest, he signed with Middle Tennessee last year, was two-time Conference USA Defensive Player of the Week. He hit the transfer portal after Coach Stockstill was let go by Middle Tennessee, and offers just started flooding in for him. I mean, I remember, I think the day he announced that he hit the portal, he had at least 10 Power 5 Division I offers. And he wound up signing with Virginia Tech yesterday. Also, Davion Carter, a really solid offensive lineman from Memphis the last couple of years, he signed his letter of intent yesterday with Texas Tech. So we have a couple others floating around out there. I know D.T. Sheffield is still getting offers in. He was at Washington State before that. Desmond Baker, who just got done playing in the bowl game that Western Kentucky was in, make sure I get this right, the famous Toastery Bowl.
Correct.
On a side note, these corporate sponsorships just get stranger every
year. I had to look that one up.
I
had to look that one up, and for the people that it's a Charlotte, North Carolina area franchise, I can compare it maybe to a Panera. If you guys have listening have been to one of those, it's similar to that. It's a restaurant of some similar ilk, so to say.
Right, and he's Desmond Baker is in the portal as well. Got to applaud him, though. He wasn't going to enter the portal without finishing out the season and the bowl game with Western Kentucky, and he was voted as a team captain going into that game. So hats off to Desmond Baker there for sticking with it and then entering the portal, doing whatever suits him best. So there are a couple other Rangers, former Rangers, that are floating around in the transfer portal, and it'll be interesting to see where some of those guys land in the coming weeks and months as well. So a lot of good things happening with Northwest at the 4-year level and even currently at the community college level with whatever signing class that we get here in February.
All right. Can you will be able to hang with me through the break?
Oh, of course. Absolutely.
Coming up in the Heindel Center on April 26th, a young lady by the name of Leanne Rhymes will appear. And that's who will take us into the commercial break here. We'll get a little Leanne Rhymes, Christmas music. We'll tell you more about things coming up in the Heindel Center as well. And after a small timeout, Brian Lentz rejoins.
Take back the holly and mistletoe.
Thanks for listening to the Bank First Ranger Hour, your connection to Northwest Mississippi Community College on Super Talk Mississippi 93.7 and streaming live at supertalknorthms.com. Just click on the link for the Bank First Ranger Hour.
Zane and Kathy Joe from the Oaks at Sherwin Farms will be on the program tomorrow morning around 9:15. We'll talk about that country, Christmas in the country and the lights and the different things and what's going on in the Enid, Mississippi world. Brian Lentz is on the phone still with us, I hope. Still there with me, buddy?
Still here.
Excellent. All right. Did we finish up with football, or is there anything else you needed to get out about that program before we bumped into something else?
Well, the only thing really with football that I'll wrap up with is that it's still an exciting time to keep up with Northwest football at the 4-year level and at the NFL level. In fact, I was thinking about Gardner Minshew this morning, which is why I posted that. If anybody saw it on social media, posted that GIF of him celebrating a touchdown when talking about this segment that I was going to do today, and it's because he has the Indianapolis Colts in the AFC playoff picture. You've got Damian Lewis and Jarek Reed for the Seattle Seahawks that have them in the NFC playoff picture. And it just really is exciting to watch these guys compete, not just at the 4-year level, but when they make it to the professional stage, whether that's in the NFL or the XFL, USFL. I know those two leagues merged this week. I'm not sure what that new name is going to be for that league. Or even in the Canadian Football League. We've got one up there, I think, playing with Montreal. But just watching these guys that you cover is so rewarding as a sports information director, and not just for football, but for all sports in general. Watching the student athletes, I've been doing this for about 9 years now, and just seeing the group of student athletes that leave, they go on to do big things on and off the field at the 4-year level, whatever college they choose to go to, and then they go out and start having careers, and it's just really rewarding to see all of that kind of come about when they leave Northwest. And I hear it said over and over again. It's probably the biggest indictment of how great of a place Northwest is. I hear a lot of these kids talk about, if Northwest was a 4-year college or university, I would have stayed there all 4 years.
Sure.
And that's just something that I don't think you can replicate at any other community college in this state.
Well said. There are ways, I know, in the social media world, because I do it, but for the listeners that are wanting to keep up with from Northwest to D1 to Sundays in the NFL or wherever, as you mentioned, other leagues they might be, where do they find that kind of information?
Well, really, social media is going to be the best place. I try to keep up with that as much as possible on the Northwest Football Twitter account, which is at NWCC_football. Of course, also there's the main athletics Twitter account, which is at NWCC_Rangers. And if you follow both of those accounts on Twitter or X or whatever the people call it now, you'll probably see every other sports account, team account, I should say, come up in the suggested followers, because we've got them for men's basketball, we've got them for baseball, got them for softball, soccer, even rodeo and golf. Of course, we've talked about golf coming back. I'm sure you've had Coach Brickley on the show earlier this fall. He's getting a good class of signees together to compete for next school year, the 24-25 semester. So real exciting things happening at Northwest. And to see all of that, in case you're not a big social media person, you just go to the athletic website, nwccrangers.com. I think between Brian Oakley, my assistant, and myself, I think we kind of keep a pretty good database of everything going on with Northwest Athletics.
How's the beard going for Oakley there, Brian Oakley? You still got that baby?
Well, let's put it this way. Coming back from Thanksgiving, he wore a Santa hat every day. So I think he's fully embraced the Santa-like beard that he has. Every Christmas party that we had in the days leading up to us getting out for the Christmas break, the Santa hat was always present. So
excellent.
I think it's kind of taken on a life of its own. Maybe we should have a parody account of that on Twitter.
That'd be great.
Somewhere along the way. I don't know. But, yeah, he's grown it out better than I would have. I can't grow it out that long, or else I'm going to be told to shave it.
I understand.
Good for Brian, though, for having the Santa beard going.
All right, so what sport, what area, where should you like to take this conversation next?
Well, really, before I do anything else, I do have to talk about how well the student-athletes did in the classroom this semester. We put out some stuff last week about this. The Athletic Director's Honor Roll, which is compiled by RAD Jake Gordon. 175 Northwest student-athletes were named to that Athletic Director's Honor Roll. And to do that, you have to have a 3.0 GPA or better in the classroom, and that was a record total. I think football alone put 40 of their players on the Athletic Director's Honor Roll. And then later on that week after graduation, you had the president's and vice president's list come out, and I counted 146 Northwest student-athletes that were on that, either one of those, president's or vice president's list. And I want to say, I think 100 of those 146 made the president's list, which you have to have a GPA of 3.75 or better to make the president's list, and a 3.5 to a 3.74 to make the vice president's list. So that talks about, we talk a lot about how Northwest student-athletes do on the field, how well the coaches and everything that they do with the student-athletes in terms of games, wins and losses, etc. But it cannot be overstated how well Northwest does with the student-athletes in the classroom. It seems like every year there's a new record or new milestone being created with how many of our student athletes are making these academic lists and these academic honors. And it just goes to show the amount of dedication and time that our athletic academic advisors put in for that job. So that I just wanted to make sure that got mentioned as well, because, 175 student athletes with a 3.0 GPA or better is pretty impressive no matter where you go. And same thing can be said for the president's and vice president's list as well.
Tremendous. And there is, in part, why they're able to sign those next national letters of intent to go play at a four-year school or wherever their choice may be. Okay, what's next?
Well, I also wanted to point out the got distracted here, rodeo. That's right. I had to talk about the rodeo. Will Loomis competed once again in the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo, and I think he finished 10th is what I have here, looking through my stories that I've done recently. Yes, he finished. He won the 10th round of the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo, which took place out in Las Vegas, and he finished with an average time of 3.8 seconds in that round. His only first-place victory of that week, but he ranks 10th now in the worldwide standings in steer wrestling. So, of course, another successful pro rodeo season for Coach Loomis. And speaking of Coach Loomis in the Northwest Rodeo program, the Ranger men are second in the Ozark region as a team in the standings heading into Christmas break, which is a perfect position to compete as a team in the National Finals Rodeo for the college level in June. That'll be in Wyoming. Of course, they got to get through the second half of the schedule first. That starts up in March. But Coach Loomis has got them in an excellent position heading into the spring season. And also, I don't want to leave these guys out either. We have 3 steer wrestlers from the Northwest Rodeo program that competed in the Junior World Finals that took place out there in Vegas as well. Will Collier, Wyatt Newman, and Kent Jordan. Wyatt Newman made it to the final round, the championship short go round, on Saturday, December 16th. I don't believe he placed, but still, to have 3 of your current student athletes make it to the World Finals out in Las Vegas, that's pretty impressive. And I can't say any other time where that's happened with current Northwest Rodeo student athletes in the past. So what Coach Loomis has done with the program has just been remarkable, turning them into a winning and nationally recognized rodeo program at the college level.
It helps when you're in the top 10, or in his case, he's been in the top 5 or top 2 or 3 at what he does, teaching those young men and women in that rodeo world, and good to see him bring that program up and into the level that it has. Look forward to the upcoming season.
Absolutely. I can't wait for it. I think the first rodeo, which I just got the second half of the season schedule the other day, I believe it's March, I want to say March 13th at East Mississippi would be the next rodeo. Don't quote me on that. Either way, I'll have that last half of the rodeo schedule online later today as well on nwccrangers.com. But certainly can't wait for that. Can't wait for our rodeo, which will be in late April. That ends the regular season. Always a highly attended event and a good time out there at the Northwest Farm.
All right, before I let you go, and I want to thank you again for doing this and being a part of the Bank First Ranger Hour today. Basketball season returns January 6th, correct?
It does. January 6th at Dyersburg State, 2 and 4 p.m. The women and men play up there. Northwest swept Dyersburg State when they came here in November to Senatobia. So the Rangers hoping to cap off non-conference play by getting a couple wins up there. Their first home game back will be January the 11th when they host Copiah Lincoln Community College. That's actually going to be a non-conference game as well. One of the last ones, though, before entering conference play. That'll be at Howard Coliseum on Ranger TV and Action News 5+. We're grateful to have that partnership with Channel 5 in Memphis that runs not just for football but into basketball season as well. So Northwest basketball, the women have been really good. The men have kind of been up and down a little bit, but they split some games in the Harvey Childers Classic earlier this month over in Boonville. Got a good win over Motlow State. Had a close loss to State Fair College out of the St. Louis area. So Coach Oakley, Shane's going to have his men rolling and hopefully geared up for a good postseason run in conference play.
All right, buddy. Happy holidays to you. Thanks for all you do in informing the people about athletics at Northwest Community College, being a friend of this program for yet another year. I thank you, and we'll catch up with you in 2024.
Real quick, Gary, before I sign off as well, I was going to put something out later today, too. Coach Carlini, Coach Carson, Coach Selby of the Northwest Baseball Program recently unveiled their list of signees for the 2025 season, so already thinking well ahead on that. They have 11 signees to their roster. I'm not going to go over the full list because it is on our website, but just visit nwccrangers.com to look up that list. I'll put it out on social media as well. And also the baseball, softball schedules are already online, so go ahead and start making your plans to come watch Coach Bramlett's softball squad and Coach Carson's baseball teams. It should be a good year for both programs as well.
You're the best, buddy. Talk to you later.
All right. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Same to you. Brian Lentz with us on the program, Sports Information Director, filling us in on everything. Very good at his job. Brian Oakley in that office with him. They do a good job of letting us know, and if you'll go to the social media sites or their website, nwccrangers.com, about what's happening in the world of athletics. What's happening in the world of music at the Heindel Center for the Performing Arts is a June 12th performance from this man. Ruben Studdard will be there with Candace Glover in June. We'll take a break. I'll talk about some other things coming up in the month of January, but Ruben takes us to break.
I'm gonna get to know you better. Yeah.
We're talking Rangers this hour. Thanks for joining us for the Bank First Ranger Hour. It's a special conversation about Northwest Community College. There's a campus near you, and you can join the conversation by texting to 662-426-1093.
Good information from Brian Lynch today. We thank him again for being on the program with a few items of business to do before we are done. If you haven't, and you're looking for a late gift idea, how about maybe a season ticket package or a gift card or something from the Heindel Center for the Performing Arts? They've got a great lineup that's going to continue to roll in 2024. The first that would come up would be on the 20th, celebrating Meatloaf. There are tickets available for that one. And then winner of America's Got Talent, Terry Fader. He's coming into Senatobia and bringing in the what is called On the Road Again tour. With his comedy and his songs, he will then do parodies as well. And then, of course, he's a ventriloquist. And so he brings in his favorite puppets like Walter T. Airedale, Vicky the Cougar, the Latin Lover, Fernando V. Francesco, and different things that he does along the way. And there is hope that prior to the January 27th show, Terry is going to be on the show here with Gary, and we'll have that on an upcoming Bank First Ranger Hour. We're trying to get that together and pull that off for you, and hopefully he will make an appearance on the show before he actually gets to Senatobia and brings that great act to you. Terry Fader coming in. He's all over the place. And in fact, when you look at his tour, when it gets into January, his next event is January the 12th in Ashland, Kentucky. Then he goes out to Arizona for the very next day. A week from that, he's in the state of Washington. And the January 27th on a Saturday, he comes to Senatobia for the Heindel Center for the Performing Arts. And so he's bouncing all over the United States. He's going to bounce in our area, and hopefully Terry can be on the program with us. All right, we'll put the wraps on today's show. We'll let you know. Again, Steve Azar will be on with In a Mississippi Minute later on today. But then, Christmas Eve, starting at 1 o'clock. You'll be able to listen to Mississippi Christmas with Steve Azar, as that will be on all of these Super Talk radio stations on Christmas Eve starting at 1, and then hours and hours of the Christmas classics and tunes and the artists and all kinds of things as Steve Azar comes to us, brought to us by Farm Families of Mississippi. Okay, so that will be coming up on Christmas on the show. Middays with Gerard is next. I hope you have yourself a good Thursday, and we'll do a radio program tomorrow somewhere starting around 9:06, 9:07. I hope you join me. Till then, so long.